While President Trump continues to attack the whistleblower behind his impeachment inquiry, both on Twitter and on camera.
You have a whistleblower that reports things that were incorrect.
His Secretary of State today is pushing back on House Democrats looking to question some of his employees. In a letter, Mike Pompeo saying Democrats are trying to intimidate, bully, and treat improperly the distinguished professionals of the Department of State.
And are you planning on going to attempt?
House Intelligence Committee Chairman Adam Schiff today refusing to answer questions about Pompeo's letter. Instead, issuing this statement late this afternoon, along with two other committee chairmen, saying Pompeo should immediately cease intimidating department witnesses in order to protect himself and the president.
Thank you very much.
Meanwhile, Ukrainian President Zelensky, whose phone call with President Trump triggered the investigation, now trying to distance himself from the controversy, insisting that he never met with Trump's personal lawyer, Rudy Giuliani, and denying that he was pressured by Trump to investigate Biden.
Did you feel pressure from President Trump to investigate the Bidens in order to unfreeze military aid?
I understood. I'd like to tell you that I never feel pressure.
All this as the president's defenders follow his lead in trying to disparage the whistleblower's credibility.
The thing is filled with, I don't know, I heard, I overheard. There's not a single time he says, I know.
Trump's other personal lawyer, Jay Sekulow, arguing the president didn't break the law.
What is the rule, regulation, statute that was violated in the conversation that the president had with the president of Ukraine? None. Nothing.
And there are some Trump allies who are worried that the White House was not adequately prepared for this fast-moving impeachment inquiry. And while CNN has learned that there are no plans as of right now for a war room to be established, we have also learned that the president's aides are expected to present him with a response plan as soon as this week. Abby Phillip, CNN, the White House.
The pressure is mounting on President Trump as Democrats continue their speedy push for impeachment. And if his Twitter feed is any judge, well, the president is feeling the heat because he's been going on a Twitter tirade that rivals all of his previous tweet storms. And we have Daniel Dale here with us to break it all down. You've looked through all of this, Daniel. What makes this Trump tweet storm unprecedented?
Brianna, there's just so many tweets. So we know that the president is holding longer rallies. He's spending more time talking to reporters. This is generally an unleashed version of Trump. And as part of the unleashedness, we were seeing a dramatic increase in the number of tweets that he is tweeting. Now, you see the increase here. One of the things that's interesting is that a lot of these are retweets. Trump has explicitly said retweets are what gets him in trouble, but that has not stopped him. So we're up to about 800 tweets last month. About 300 of those were retweets. Now, his number 2 month was in May of this year. Well, what happened just before that? The release of the Mueller report. So it's always hard to get in the president's head, but it seems to be the case that when he's feeling threatened or besieged, that's when he tweets a lot. Now, we just had a record, 240. All of the top 5 weeks, all 5 of them were this year. So the number just keeps rising and rising. Now, the number 1 day was May 1st. I went back and looked what was happening on May 1st. Why was he tweeting so much? Well, it turns out that almost all of these were retweets. He was angry that a firefighters union had endorsed Joe Biden, so he retweeted more than 50 people criticizing that decision. So that's how we got our record.
J.W. Verrett teaches law at George Mason University and was an advisor to the Trump pre-transition team. And, you know, it's worth noting it was after the Mueller report that you decided to support the impeachment proceedings. So what is your reaction now to this phone call that shows the president trying to shake down Ukraine's president for dirt on his political rival?
Well, I felt there was enough there to begin impeachment proceedings. In fact, to call for a vote of impeachment contained in the Mueller report. There was enough to begin what's essentially a version of a grand jury process. But this is much worse. I mean, people have made the analogy to the Nixon era scandals and Nixon's resignation. But this is a lot worse than that. Nixon was a patriot. Nixon never would have accepted all the crazy things he did. He never would have accepted help from a foreign power for his own personal interest in an election, particularly one that would compromise the U.S. strategic interests. This is much worse, and I think the momentum continues toward impeachment.
In the case of Nixon, there was this sense that the cover-up was really what got him in trouble, right? The cover-up almost being worse than the crime. But when you look at this, do you feel the cover-up is worse than the crime or not?
Well, thankfully,
alleged crime, I should say, or transgression. Let's call it a transgression. I don't want to say it's a crime. We don't know the answer to that.
Yeah,
question.
well, but I think there's enough to begin proceedings to look into election-based fraud and even to bring in Mr. Giuliani as a facilitator of accepting foreign help in election, which is a felony. But more to the point, yeah, there was potentially a cover-up, but a bumbling cover-up that was quickly, I think, revealed by a courageous whistleblower. So we're in a very different position to move quickly, I think. I'm glad the House is finally moving on impeachment. I think it's unfortunate Speaker Pelosi took this long. I think she, frankly, empowered Trump to do this second major violation. But now everything's moving in the right direction. I just hope Republicans will.
I think social media is dangerous because it's so easy to just repost it or like it.
There's so many kinds of fake news. It's very hard to define and you can never really know.
Yeah.
These students and their discussion are a vital tool in Finland's fight against fake news. A fight this Nordic state appears well equipped to handle, having recently ranked top in a study measuring a country's resilience to the post-truth phenomenon. The focus here is not on big tech or on AI algorithms, but to look inwards, at society. And the first line of defense is in these classrooms and in the minds of these students.
We don't have a critical thinking lessons. It's built in all the subjects.
It'll spread like a plague, basically, so someone else will repost it afterwards and suddenly it will become real, quote unquote, so people will actually think, well, it's everywhere, it has to be real.
What we want our students to do is that before they like or share anything in the social media, they think twice. Who has written this? Where has it been published? Can I find the same information from the other source?
The aim is to arm the students with a digital literacy toolkit for an online world that's filled with Instagram, Snapchat, YouTube. This national curriculum is part of a huge government effort to raise awareness of disinformation. And it seems to be taking hold.
I've seen a lot of my friends post dumb. They're good friends, but sometimes they just don't do any fact-checking.
Finland is in a unique position when it comes to this particular fight. It ranks near the top of almost every global index. Happiness, press freedom, gender equality, social justice. No wonder it's difficult for external actors to find cracks to exploit.
How Finland's been able to counter these kind of foreign-led hostile information activities, the basic foundations of our society. It has taken many generations, but it's always important to remember that it's also easy to lose.
Many of these foundations were laid shortly after World War II, in part because the country shares an 832-mile-long border with Russia. Since declaring its independence more than 100 years ago, Finland has kept a wary eye on its neighbour to the east. Concerns about Russian disinformation campaigns, including interfering in the 2016 US presidential elections, which Moscow denies, made it clear to Finland it was time to prepare for a new battlefield, one that was moving online.
In the past years, we have trained over 10,000 civil servants, citizens, journalists. We have given the basic information about what information influencing is all about.
The goal is to raise the awareness of the entire society, including older generations who may be experiencing the digital landscape for the first time.
Media literacy and critical thinking, teaching those, it's obviously not enough.
Journalist Jessica Arrow faced a barrage of trolls